Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I would like to follow up on a trade that we were looking at, or setup we were looking at in yesterday's MTPredictor training webinar. But first, I would like to start by looking at our risk disclaimer and remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades were actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Also, there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. All professional traders know and understand that losses can and will and do happen. Right, let's have a look at the trade setup we were looking at. I haven't added any data to our this NinjaTrader 8 chart yet, and this is how we were the trade setup was looking like when we actually left our webinar yesterday, or during our webinar yesterday. The setup, a couple of setups we're looking at. The first one was this VS setup here, the volume spike setup, that turned out to be a very nice setup indeed. That came down into the first target on a black MTP trend to start with, and at this point the MTP trend was strong. I passed our strength band, so we trailed with our ATR stop and came out. You would have come out at about a plus 11R profit, so it was a very, very nice trade indeed. Just take that all off. But the trade setup we were looking at was this TS3 Holy Grail Buy setup. Now, although it was against a red MTP trend, what I was actually looking at in the webinar was to not only use the higher time frame of the 5-minute chart, but also we were looking at the slightly higher time frame yet again of the 60-minute chart. And for this, what we were saying was we were looking at a DP from this previous pivot here and seeing how support was coming in at this particular low. We also noted that the decline down came off this DP here very nicely down into this DP. So this is what we were looking at. We were actually looking at support coming in on the 60-minute chart at this level here. So what we were looking at was this buy setup was now in the direction of a potential large degree up move because it was coming at higher time frame support. So let's place the analysis on here and let's see what the position was during our webinar yesterday. As you can see, the market hadn't quite reached the first target for the Holy Grail, which is the typical Wave 3 WPT. For those of you who are new to this, a Holy Grail trade setup is where we start with a major low or an important swing low, i.e. one that comes in at a higher time frame for support zone. The initial rally would be considered a wave 1. The initial correction that subdivides into an A, B, C, a 3-swing A, B, C correction, would be considered a wave 2, and therefore we're looking for a strong impulsive rally into at least the typical wave 3 WPT. So I'm just going to pause the video now and connect to real-time data feed and just see how this unfolded after our webinar finished yesterday. Right, now I've brought the chart up to date. You can see this is what happened. The market actually rallied very strongly and kept on going, which was a great trade indeed. And what we were talking about in the actual webinar is we were saying that because the MTP trend had gone strong, i.e. past our grey strength band, once the market got to the typical wave 3 WPT, I suggested that traders should use our ATR stop, which is our red and in this case our blue dots here because it's a long trade, to then trail your stop and then be stopped out when the market then crossed that. So that would have meant that the stop would have come to here, to here. You can see it's trailing at our ATR stops, and then would mean you've been stopped out at about here, and as you can see the result would have been an absolute massive profit of 13 times the initial risk. In other words, a 13R trade, or put another way, using a risk of less than 2% on a sample $20,000 account, that would have been trading 33 mini lots for an initial risk of just under $400, and that would have turned the profit into just over 5,100. So a very, very nice trade indeed. But the reason I've done this video is because we were looking at this particular trade setup at the time in our live customer training webinar yesterday. So it's important, I think, to follow up on these trade setups afterwards to show how they would have unfolded. And remember, for you guys who are looking at this, this was a slightly more advanced trade because it was against our MTP trend color coded indicator, but the reason we were looking at it is because it came off clear 60-minute support zone there, and that's what we're looking at in our training. So a very, very nice trade there, and a great example of our where are we? Of our Holy Grail trade setup. If you hang on a second, I'm just going to reload that data. I'm just going to pause the video. I'm not quite sure what's happened in NinjaTrader 8 there. Just give me a second. There we go. Sorry about that. Just had to reload the data in NinjaTrader 8. So here's the result. Our Holy Grail trade setup into the first target, our typical wave 3 WPT, which was there, and that's what we're looking at in our webinar. Because the MTP trend indicator had gone strong, in other words beyond our strength band, swapped to trailing with our ATR stop, and that meant trailing all the way up there and would have been stopped out for a very nice profit of approximately plus 13R. So a very, very good example of an MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup that unfolded off a trade setup we were looking at live in our MTPredictor Training Room yesterday. And as you can see, a very, very nice and big profitable trade was the end result.